Good morning. I'm Bob Page. I'm the Registrar of Voters for the County of Orange, and I want to welcome everybody here today for our media briefing for our 2024 presidential general election. The first thing I want to just make sure that I outline is, I know we've got about 7 or so members of the media on the call right now. Please, while we're making the presentation, please mute yourself. If you have a question as I'm going over something, please raise your hand using the hand-raising tool on Zoom. Also, if you could please, so that we can take roll, could you please type your name and media organization in the chat so we have a record of everyone who attended today? Next, I've got several members of my management team who are on this call with me to assist in case I need help with a question. So if we could go through and let's see here, and if each member of my team could introduce themselves. If I go alphabetically, I've got David.
Hi, I'm David Golding. I'm the Warehouse and Logistics Manager here at the Registrar of Voters.
Thank you, David. And Adina?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Anavina Chim. I'm the Community Outreach Manager here.
Imelda?
Good morning, Imelda Carrillo, Election Services Manager.
Justin?
Justin Berardino, Deputy Director of Operations.
Kim?
Good morning, everyone. Kim Hostler, Deputy Director, Administrative Services.
Marcia?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcia Nielsen. I'm the Candidate and Voter Services Manager.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just move this out of the way. So for today's media briefing, we will be going over some basic information about the general election and some important dates. Let you know about our schedule for mailing information out to our voters, some information about the security measures that we put into place to ensure that our election is accurate and secure. Kind of walk through some information we have available for the media on our website to help you do your jobs, as well as identify some upcoming opportunities for you to cover the election, either photography or stories as well. And then end up with just a little bit of an update on the success that we had by expanding our ballot processing capacity after the 2022 general election, to kind of just outline that for you. Now, for the presidential general election, we actually mailed our English voter information guides last week, on Wednesday and Thursday of last week. Right now, we're getting out the translated voter information guides in Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. The ballots will be mailed to all registered voters in the county on Monday. The Postal Service actually asked if they could pick the ballots up this weekend, so they'll be picking them up on Saturday and then starting to deliver them on Monday to voters. The last day for people to register to vote and be mailed a ballot through normal processes is Monday, October 21st. We will have 38 vote centers that will open up on October 26th throughout the county. And then on November 2nd, that Saturday before Election Day, an additional 146 will open up vote centers throughout the county. So we'll have a total of 184 vote centers in this election. Again, the last day to vote and the last hour to vote is 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 5th. And then for this election, we will be certifying on December 3rd. That is a certainty. There is no question or prediction regarding when we're going to certify, and that's because on the 22nd of September, Governor Newsom signed an urgency bill, AB 3184, which did two things. It set a specific deadline throughout the state for all voters in all counties for how long they have to cure a signature challenge with their vote by mail ballot, whether they didn't sign it or that we found that the signature on the envelope did not compare to the signature we had on file. So all voters will be given until 5 p.m. on Sunday, December 1st to submit. We have to actually receive their signature verification statement by that point. That's not a postmark deadline. That's an actual receipt deadline. Then we are prohibited from certifying before Tuesday, December 3rd. The only caveat is we could certify earlier if we had received responses from every single voter that we send a cure notification to. That's never happened before, so I'm not expecting that we would be able to certify early. So we will be certifying on Tuesday, December 3rd. Which means then that we have a full 28-day canvass period to continue to process and count vote by mail ballots that we receive on election day or received by the post office within 7 days. Remember, vote by mail envelopes must be postmarked by November 5th, but the Postal Service can deliver them to us within 7 days. We will also be processing provisional ballots. And as part of that process, we'll be doing signature verification, that cure process that I talked to you about, as well as conducting our audits and tests during the canvass period. This is a link to the electronic VIG. As I mentioned, we mailed those last week. Voters will start receiving their ballots on Monday. We encourage people to sign up for ballot tracking by going to ocvote.gov/track. As I mentioned, we'll have 184 vote centers. We also will have 123 ballot drop boxes that we will unlock on Monday, and those will be open until 8 p.m. on November 5th. And it's a reminder, voters have 4 ways that everybody will be mailed a ballot, obviously, as I mentioned, but they will have 4 ways that they can actually vote in the election once they receive their ballot. They can return it to us through the Postal Service. We pay for the postage. They can drop it into any of those drop boxes I mentioned. They can drop off their mail ballot after they mark it in person at a vote center, as well as our office. Or if they want to receive an in-person ballot and mark it at a vote center, they can do that as well. Now, this presentation will be posting on our website, so I'm not going to be talking about everything on the slide in terms of what's on the ballot. But just to let you know that there are 171 contests in Orange County that we will be conducting an election for, which results in us having 573 different ballot styles that we had to produce. There are 30 local measures that we're conducting for cities and school districts. Now, our security and integrity measures, we want to make sure that every election we conduct in the county is secure, accurate, transparent, accessible, and fair. And on the security side, we basically approach that from 4 different methods, both physical, technical, process, as well as people-based security measures. Physical, I will mention our ballot drop boxes. They're made of thick, secure metal. They weigh more than 1,000 pounds. They're each bolted to the concrete. They are placed in high traffic areas. And they're individually keyed. So there is no master key that somebody could get a hold of that would allow them to open every single box. Technical measures, one of the things I'll mention is that we do use electronic poll books or electronic voter rosters that transport voter participation information between our office and every single vote center in near real time, which helps us to ensure that people do not vote twice. Process, after election day, we always conduct audits so that every ballot that is cast in the election is on paper, and we will hand count a percentage of those that are randomly selected every election to confirm the accuracy of the voting system count. The one thing I did want to highlight a little bit more is we do get questions from time to time about how accurate our voter registration file is. So this is something that we are working on daily. We actually average about 60,000 updates to voter registration records every month. We obviously start with information provided to us by the voter, as well as official government sources like the Postal Service, Secretary of State, Department of Corrections, the county's health agency that tells us about deceased voters. So we're constantly working those sources of information and making updates to that. We also go above and beyond what we're minimally required to do and work with third-party information, such as a credit agency will compare our voter registration information with the address information that a credit agency will have for our voters, and then we'll send those voters who have a different address that the credit agency is aware of, we'll send them a notice to that address and ask them to confirm that they are still residing at the address we have, or if they've moved, so that we can update their registration record. So we do have to mail that to them, and they have to respond. We can't update a record because a credit agency tells us that somebody has moved, or somebody calls us and tells us that that person doesn't live at that address anymore. We still need to confirm it with the voter or with an official government source. We know that all that work that we do, both the required work and the discretionary work, is successful. And we know that because only 1.59% of the ballots we mailed out for the primary in March came back to us as undeliverable. Now, comparing that to data that the U.S. Postal Service puts out, they have reported that in 2023, that for all first-class mail that was sent out in fiscal year 2023, 4.23% of that mail was undeliverable. So, we're doing a much better job of ensuring that our ballots are getting through. Ballots will not be forwarded by the Postal Service. That's why they come back to us. Election mail does not get forwarded. Lastly, with people, we are hiring a lot of people for our election. We start with 56 full-time employees on our staff, but then for this election, we have been hiring more than 1,900 people to help us with the election, most of those working in the vote centers. But we, as part of that application process and hiring process, we are interviewing them, we're testing them, we're doing a full criminal background check on them. And then they are put through some very rigorous and extensive training to ensure that they are ready to do the job that we've hired them to do. Now, new for this election, we have updated the media page on our website to help you find things on our website a little bit more easily. So we created what we're calling a media kit, but it's not really like a printable document. It's going to be a list of links to different things that are on our website to help you find them more quickly. So we want to make sure that we help you get information that you need, data that you need. But if you go after this briefing and kind of poke around on the media kit, if there's things that you typically want to know that you're not finding on the media kit, let us know. We can update that. That's the nice thing of having this be a web-based program, is we can update it very, very easily. So as I said, it'll give you links to information about the election, links to how to get to the results, registration information, ballot returns, as well as we're starting to post on that some B-roll that we've taken over the years that you might want to use for your journalistic purposes, as well as photos and graphics. So just as a reminder, there's going to be more slides here, but for the purpose of keeping us on time, just want to highlight for you these links specifically. Our Data Central is a place where you can find current daily registration information that's broken down by political party, as well as ballots returned and ballots issued. So you can, every night, we're updating this page overnight to let you know how many more vote-by-mail ballots were returned to us the day before. Also, we have Map Central, which will also have that registration information, but in addition to breaking it down by political party, you can also look at it by age group. It's also a place where our voters or you could type in an address and see who represents the person living at that address, all the different levels of government and representatives that they have, as well as it provides a way for you to map out results by precinct or by district. Finally, I know obviously you guys are very interested in the results that we post on election night and then every day afterwards. And so, our ocvote.gov/results page is going to be a critical page for you to go to. It's where you'll see the current results, as well as where you can see how many ballots are left to process after. So after election night, the last report that we issue, once all of the in-person ballots have been put into the results, we're updating that we're creating an estimate for how many ballots we believe are left to process. And then every successive day that we issue a results report, we will update that estimate of how many ballots are left to process. So as I said, I've got some slides here. We'll post these. It'll kind of help you walk through how to access information on Data Central. as well as in terms of how to get information regarding registration, not just county-wide, but by city or district, and how to click the tab for ballots to see ballots returned. Right now, obviously, it's showing zeros on the screen grab, but it'll be updated as we start getting ballots back. Map Central, this kind of just gives you an idea of what it looks like. There is a tutorial on there to help you walk through it. But as I mentioned, you can see, you can pick a district. This is highlighting for the first supervisor district, and then showing what the overall registration is at the bottom. And then you can then pick voters by age, and it'll break it down into those 4 age groups. And you can also break it down by party, and it will break it down for you visually as well. This is what the Find My District page will look like, and where you can type in an address to find out who represents that address. It'll then produce a list of the folks that represent that residence. As I mentioned, there are results on Map Central, so you can go through and pick what area you want to get the results for, and go down to actually picking the actual precinct if you want to see what the turnout is for that precinct. Now in results, this is our basic results page, so you can click on current results to see the current results. You're also here, it says customize viewing results. You click on that and you can actually have it jump straight to, if you select a specific type of contest or group of contests, it'll produce a new report giving you that information. Also, then if you click on customized election results on the drop down page on the homepage for results, you can click on customized election results and then see what our election reporting schedule is, which will start by just, right now, if you were to look at it, I don't believe it's been updated, but once we start posting the basic 0 report for results, it'll show you, okay, we're going to post the first results at 8:05 on election night. And then if you scroll the bottom of the results homepage, that we have what's called popular links. That's where you'll find the what's left to count link that, as I said, we update with new estimates every time we post at the end of the first night on election night, and then every subsequent night that afternoon that we post results, you will be able to see an updated, within a few minutes or up to a half hour, we'll update the what's left to process after we post the results. Now, just to highlight some media opportunities for you, as I mentioned, we had originally planned that the Postal Service would show up early on Monday morning to pick up our ballots. They did call us and ask if they could pick them up this Saturday. So we adjusted our plans so that we can start loading up their box trucks on Saturday. They'll then get them ready for putting into the carrier routes on Monday, so that ballots will start arriving for certain voters on Monday, actually. So if you want to come and get photos or be here for that, recommend you be here at 8 a.m. on Saturday to be checked in and let back into our warehouse to watch that process. As I mentioned before, early voting begins on October 7th. So beyond the Postal Service delivering ballots, we'll have teams out there opening and unlocking each one of our ballot drop boxes. As well, if a voter doesn't want to wait until their ballot gets delivered to them, they can come to our Santa Ana office on Monday, be issued a replacement ballot, and vote it that day. Then, as we will start doing limited ballot processing on Tuesday next week. Typically won't start scanning ballots for a week until we get enough of them that show up, but we can start doing signature verification and other basic things to prepare the ballots for scanning. The other thing that we start doing on Saturday is we start creating test ballots for our logic and accuracy tests. So every single ballot scanner that we use in an election, whether in our office or in a vote center, we have to ensure that it's accurately counting the votes. So we create test ballots. Based on those test ballots, we know what the results should be. Every single scanner we're going to use, those test ballots are run through those pieces of equipment, and only equipment that accurately counts the ballots will be used in the election. Then, as I mentioned before, we open up our first set of vote centers that'll be open for 11 days on Saturday, October 26th. For those, if you want to see vote centers being set up before voters start showing up, that would happen the 2 days prior, the Thursday and Friday for those 38. Then we are scheduling again for this election to have a media tour event at our office on Tuesday, October 29th at 10:30 a.m. to kind of show you our ballot processing, kind of walk you through all the different steps so you can see that firsthand. We will be having a special visitor with us at this election. It'll be Senator Catherine Blakespear, who represents the 38th district in the state Senate. She also happens to be the chair of the Senate Elections and Constitutional Amendments Committee. So she asked if she could come down and see how we operate to help her with her responsibility chairing that committee. So she'll be here on that day. And then, as I mentioned, on Saturday, November 2nd, we will open an additional 146 vote centers to be open for the last 4 days of voting. Those will be set up because there's more of them. We start setting them up on Wednesday. So they'll be set up in groups on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday if you want to catch any of that. Then obviously we have election day on November 5th. And so we'll be busy during the day if you want to be here. If you want to be here for when we start posting results at 8:05, that'd be something that you can watch. Obviously, I'll only have a couple staff members who will be in the tally room to run those. But if you've been here before, that room is got large glass windows and TV monitors outside that mirror the screens that we're working on in the computers inside. And then we begin the official canvass on Wednesday, November 6th. And so for that, one of the things that we, as I mentioned before, that we do is our audits. So while we start the canvass on November 6th and keep processing vote by mail ballots, we will on Wednesday the 7th will be the date that we randomly select at least 1% of the precincts in the county for the 1% manual tally hand count audit. So that'll occur at 11 a.m. on November 7th. And then on November 8th is when we randomly select the seed number of 20 digits for doing the risk limiting audit. So for those of you who may not have watched our elections before, we do these two different audits. The 1% manual tally, as I said, we are randomly selecting at least 1% of all our precincts, and then every single ballot in that precinct will be hand counted by teams of 4. We typically, I say at least 1% because we typically need to select additional precincts, because the other thing we need to make sure we do is that every single contest that is on a ballot in the county has to be included in that hand count audit. So we'll have to, after we randomly select 1%, then we then identify, okay, what contests are not on any of those ballots in those precincts, and have to select additional precincts until we get all of the contests into the audit. The risk limiting audit, rather than counting all the ballots in a precinct, we will select contests for that RLA, and then based on the seed number that we've randomly selected, that risk limiting audit software will select the number of individual ballots that the software believes we need to confirm the accuracy of the machine count in order to have confidence that the voting system results are correct. And so it's a random selection of individual ballots rather than hand counting every single ballot in a precinct. So we do both of those. Now, the last thing I did want to mention is that one of the questions that we will get from time to time, as I mentioned, how long our canvass period will be for this election is dictated by that legislation, that new law. But in the past, it's always been our goal to try to accurately finish up the canvass ahead of that deadline and not use the full 28 or 30 days that we're allowed for the canvass. But even though we are really good about processing things efficiently, we do traditionally get a lot of vote by mail ballots that will be cast on election day, that we'll either receive on election day or that will be delivered to us by the Postal Service. Because of that, the first 4 weeks we're fine managing all those ballots that are coming in. So for the primary election, we had 333,000 vote by mail ballots that were cast before Election Day, that during those 4 weeks, we can keep processing them and stay on top of those. And the vast majority of those will be completely processed and scanned before we issue that first result report on Election Day, on election night. But then we had 251,000 ballots that were actually cast on Election Day. So going from having 4 weeks to manage the processing of more than 300,000 to then having 250,000 plus ballots all provided to us all in one day obviously creates a little bit of a backlog that we need to get through to get those processed. So that's one of the reasons why when we're asked, why does it take the time it does to finish counting and get the results posted? That's the reason, is they're 85% of our voters are casting a mail ballot rather than voting in person. And it just takes time to do the signature verification and process those. So, and this was a trend that we were seeing. The yellow bars on these will be those that were cast on or after Election Day. And so in the statewide general election in 22, we had the most number of vote by mail ballots that were cast on Election Day we'd ever experienced, which was 311,000. And so as a result of seeing that and understanding this trend probably wasn't going to change, we do our best to promote early voting, but we know well, one, voters have a right to vote up until 8 p.m. on Election Day, so we can't take that away from them, obviously, and we don't want to. But we do encourage people to vote early, but we know that a lot of voters still want to use that full period to continue to think about and monitor the news before they cast a ballot. So we knew we had to be thinking about how we could better manage that large influx of ballots that show up on Election Day and the week after. So we worked with county leadership, and the county invested $4.1 million after the 2022 general election that allowed us to increase our capacity for processing mail ballots. So basically, all the key pieces of equipment that we use in the ballot process, vote by mail ballot process, we doubled. So, some of you might be aware that we actually print our own ballots and mail them out ourselves. So we have traditionally had just one piece of equipment that helps us to insert those ballots into envelopes. We purchased a second so that we could increase the capacity and also potentially have a backup in case one went down. When ballots come back, we run them through a mail sorter that scans the barcode on the envelope that is associated with the voter to give them voter participation, and also takes an image of their signature so that our staff can start doing signature verification. We increased the number of sorters that we had from 2 to 4. Once a ballot is accepted after it goes through signature verification, we then have to cut the envelopes open and pull the ballots out. So we have pieces of equipment that are called mail extractors. We increased the number of those that we had from 8 to 16. And we immediately saw some improvement in our efficiency for the presidential primary election. So one is that prior to the primary, when we were picking up vote by mail ballots from the ballot boxes, we were typically not getting those into the mail sorters until the day after we picked them up. So in the primary, we were able to start processing those through the mail sorters on the same day we picked them up. This then resulted on the first election results we posted on election night. 91% of the early vote by mail ballots that were cast were included in that results, which was an improvement from 85% that were included in the first results in November of 22. Additionally, we were able to process them more quickly over the next week. So 1 week after Election Day in the primary, we had counted and included in the results 96% of all the ballots that ended up in the count, which was up from 89% in November of 22. Granted, we may not see these same percentages for this election because we're going to have a higher turnout. We'll have more ballots, but at least we saw that improvement for the primary, and we know that increasing our equipment capacity has had a positive impact on our operations. I'll end by just providing you our contact information. And as I mentioned, these slides will be posted on our media page as well in the new media kit that we mentioned. It's not there yet, but after we get through this meeting, we'll post both the slides and a video of this presentation in the media kit. But we do have a specific phone line in our office for the media to call to get assistance. That's 714-567-5197. And we have a dedicated email account for the media to get help that a number of people on our staff have access, so that if you're mailing to one person, that person's away from their desk, you could be waiting, but we've got several people who have access to this media email. So if you send an email to mediasupport@ocvote.gov, you have a greater chance of having somebody seen it more quickly than if you just email it to me or to Enadina. So that's my basic overview of this election. We're now open for if anybody has any questions. And if you want, I'm not seeing any hands right now, but if you want to, I'll stop sharing my screen so I can bring up everybody's. Okay. So if you want, just turn your camera on and go ahead and start asking questions. Hi, David.
Hey, sir. Yeah, when it comes to voter turnout, what are you expecting this year? Obviously, a lot of eyes are on the election, but can you talk about what you're expecting when it comes to actual voter turnout? Do you expect it to be same as 2020, a little more, a little less?
Yeah, what I can say on turnout is that this presidential general election is typically the highest turnout election in the cycle that we will see, but I do not publicly predict how many voters are going to be there, because I don't want to influence what the turnout's going to be. My job as the election administrator is to make sure we're prepared no matter what the turnout is. So if we had 100% turnout, that we have the staff, we have the facilities, and we've got the equipment to be able to handle those voters. But I don't publicly say, I think the turnout's going to be this percentage or that percentage. But this election typically has the highest turnout of any of the elections in the cycle.
And then now that I have you on camera, I know we had the full screen, but when it comes to anything you've learned compared to other elections that you've addressed and are planning to address this election cycle, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, every election we get together as a team and identify things that we can improve in our processes, both in terms of making us more efficient, but also better serving the voter. So we're very, voter centric in terms of how we conduct our business and customer service. So every election we're looking at things that we can do. The one thing that is visible that I mentioned is we want to make sure we're supporting the media better. So we're providing that toolkit to you. We're also cognizant of the possibility of misinformation. So we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve our outreach and voter education program, how we can make sure we're touching all areas of our county and not just focusing on one, but making sure we're reaching out to everybody. We're looking at our messaging, ways that we can get it out. But then we also realize that while I am the official source of election information, I know that I don't have the same number of followers that somebody else in the community, another community leader may have. And so a big part of what we try to do is to work with community partners to help amplify information about the election to their constituents directly. And so we have the last couple of elections created a communication toolkit that we share with our community partners that includes template social media messages and graphics, template newsletter articles they can use, as well as educational videos that they can share, slide decks that they could use if they want to make a presentation. We also provide some easy infographics, one about how easy it is to vote, and another one that kind of highlights the security measures. So we pushed that out. And then the new thing that we did for this election is we actually worked with some of our community partners to produce videos that we could put out either through paid ads or on our social media sites, where we have members of the community talking about why they trust our elections as being easy and secure. So we're making sure that we are addressing that. And then the last thing I'll say is that because we want our elections to be transparent, we're constantly looking at how we set up for observation. Do we have enough cameras and monitors for people to see what we're doing? So every election we're adding a few more cameras, a few more monitors, and rethinking that. So I'd say those are the biggest things that we're doing. One of the things that we added in the primary that we found very useful that we're going to continue to do is that when we have all the vote centers open, we've got a command center in our office of staff that are on the phone monitoring the usage of the the electronic poll books to make sure that they're transmitting information, they're connected, and they're answering phones and helping people when they have questions in the vote centers. In the primary, we actually added a sheriff's sergeant to sit in the command center with us so that when somebody from a vote center calls and has a situation, a disturbance or something that they're concerned about that doesn't rise to the level that they need to call 911. Obviously, if somebody feels like they're in immediate danger, we instruct them to call 911. But if it's something less than that, they just need some assistance on dealing with a disruptive voter or somebody who's upset. By having that sheriff sergeant in our office, we're able to more quickly triage that event and kind of figure out whether we need to send the police. And then they obviously have the contacts with each city police department to quickly get them to dispatch out to the site. So in the past, we would get that, talk about ourselves, and then contact the sheriff's department, who would then assist us with disseminating the information. But now having a sergeant on site, I think, has helped us be much more efficient on dealing with any issue that might arise at a vote center.
And just to follow up on that real quickly, did you see examples of that during the last election or during the 2020 presidential election of agitated voters or kind of somebody intimidating a voter where you needed to kind of implement this new strategy of bringing in a sheriff just to have someone present there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get calls from time to time that require us to send somebody out to help with that. We also, and I didn't mention this, but we also work with the district attorney's office. They have investigators out in the field when our vote centers are open. If we get a complaint about electioneering or intimidation, something that they can address a little bit more easily than a police officer can, so we can send out a district attorney's investigators to help with that as well. You know, we had a few calls in the primary, things that didn't necessarily happen in the vote center itself, but maybe happened on the site. Like there was a disturbance out in the parking lot that wasn't necessarily related to the vote center, but it still was something that could potentially dissuade voters from going in. So we sent a police officer out to that. So just little things like that, nothing major. Matthew, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Bob. In every cycle, there's usually a number of very close elections, and there's some really high profile ones in Orange County this year. So what is the procedure at the Orange County ROV for challenging ballots? And how does it, like, if an observer is there says I'm challenging the authenticity or validity of that ballot, what happens from there?
Well, what observers can challenge is whether our staff is following law and procedure. They can't, if somebody's doing signature verification, they can't challenge the decision that was made by that person, whether the signature compared or not, and can be accepted. What they can do is say that person you have doing signature verification, I keep seeing them doing things that I don't believe follow the law. And then we can then have the lead person who's managing that team review that person's work for the last, however many minutes, and see whether there's an issue that person needs to be, have their training tweaked a little bit and reminded about their job. So there's no specific process for somebody to challenge an individual ballot. There are provisions in state law that somebody, if they're at a vote center, could challenge whether somebody walks in to vote is eligible to vote, but they have to provide evidence. They can't just say that person's not eligible. And then the procedure at that point, if somebody was an observer at a vote center, was to challenge somebody's eligibility, under state law that we have to follow, the fix to that challenge is to ask the voter, are you eligible? And will you attest verbally that you are eligible? And once they do that, that person gets to vote. So there's I don't have authority to check IDs. I don't have authority to check citizenship. If somebody's attesting under penalty of perjury that they're eligible to vote, that's what I'm required to accept.
Okay, so just a follow up. So let's say an observer is watching the ballots, and one of the workers has a ballot in which the signature on the envelope clearly does not match the signature on file, and then counts the vote. There's no appeal of that. Is that what you're saying?
Not on individual signature determinations. No, they challenge that person is not following the law. We don't stop the presses and hold that ballot until we resolve the objection. So They
Is
can,
that a state law? Is that state
yeah,
law?
yeah.
So I
That's
mean,
in,
it could be like even
yeah, it's in state regulations and it's in the elections code as well. The Secretary of State issued expanded regulations last year before the primary regarding observation. And so that's in there as well. But on that point, so similarly, we did get a few people who sent us large lists that they said were evidence of people that shouldn't be registered, that weren't eligible. There is no process allowed in state law to do mass challenges to eligibility like that. And essentially, as I mentioned, if you're going to challenge a voter's eligibility in that way based on a list, that voter's not present. And so there's a high level of burden of proof on the person doing that. Typically, what we'll get is a list of names and a statement from the person saying, I compared your voter roll to this United States Postal Service change of address thing, and you've got people on your voter roll who've moved. That's something we already do. So typically what we'll find is we'll say to the person, okay, thank you. We'll randomly select some of the names you had to see whether they're updated. We already look at that. So we're pretty confident that that voter record's been updated since the list you purchased. Because that's the other thing is typically people are working off of voter lists that are months or, weeks old. And so as I mentioned, we're updating every day. So, it's most of the time what we find is we'll randomly select some names and we'll find that we already made the update to the record. And so, we'll randomly select like 10 and then let the person know, yeah, we've spot checked some of the names you had and we've already made these updates because we're using the same database you are.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill.
Hi, yeah, thanks for doing this, Bob. I just wondered if you had any numbers on how many people are using the vote centers early on, like on a daily basis, or any thoughts about that in general. I'm just kind of curious how the change in the vote centers and the early voting is working out.
Yeah, I can definitely get you exact numbers, but what I can tell you on the spot is that the first 7 days, there's very low turnout in the vote centers that are open for 11 days. When we've had like the special recall elections in a city, we've had days where no one showed up during that first 7 days. But that, typically, the first 7 days, you'll maybe average at most one voter per hour in a vote center. But we start to see an increase on the Saturday before Election Day. And then obviously the vast majority of people who are voting in person are doing it on Election Day. And so typically, if you compare the numbers for the first 10 days versus the last day, it's at least 3 or 4 times as many people vote on that one day on Election Day than did the 10 days combined prior to it. But I can definitely follow up with you and get you exact turnout numbers by day at the vote centers if you'd like that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? See, Hannah's not asking a question because she knows it all already.
Well, actually, I guess I will. I do
Yeah.
have one follow-up to that. I mean, is the office kind of monitoring those numbers and thinking about tweaks for the future? I mean, one voter per hour. I mean, I think you were talking about special elections for that, but yeah, I'm just curious. Is there sort of are you looking at maybe potential ways to be more efficient about that in the future?
Yeah, definitely. In next year after this election, we will be reviewing and updating our election administration plan. So right now in our election administration plan that was updated in 2021, we specifically call out the hours that our vote centers are open. So the first 7 days they're open from 8 to 5. The last weekend, that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they're open from 8 to 8, and then election day it's open from 7 to 8. And so I anticipate that will be something that we look at. Are those the best hours? We're required under state law the first 10 days to be open at least 8. So we're open 9 and 12 the first 10 days. Do we need to be open that number of hours? Is there a better time during the day, the first 7 days, rather than being 8 to 5? If we shifted the hours to 10 to 6 or 10 to 7, would that cause more people to be able to use the vote centers? So those will be discussions that we have with the community when we're updating our election administration plan next year.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And since I mentioned the election administration plan, if any of you are interested on getting added to an interested parties list, so when we start sending out notices about meetings or documents being posted online, you can go to ocvote.gov/EAP, and there will be a place for you to sign up on an interested parties list so that whenever we send anything out about that review of our election administration plan, you can get a notice. We'll obviously do press releases as well, but if you're interested in being on that list, you could do that. And we're encouraging our voters to sign up on that list as well. We've added a page in our county voter information guide that lets people know that we're going to be doing the review of our election administration plan next year, and encourages them to go to that site, review the current plan, sign up on the interested parties list. So that's something that we want to make sure we're encouraging people to participate next year in that process. Okay, any other questions? Well, if you think of something later, you can call, you can email, and we will answer your questions. So I do appreciate everybody showing up today and for participating in this. As I said, by the end of the day, we'll post these slides on our website as well as the video from this presentation. So thank you again for participating, and thank you for your help educating the public regarding our voting process, the election security measures that we have in place, and how they can get information. So I do appreciate that.